Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we're going to review Into the Radius VR, a game released on July 20th, 2020 by developers CM Games. It normally retails for $29.99. I did receive a free Steam key through the Steam Creator Connect program to review this game, and I tested it out on the Meta Quest 3 using link cable on my RTX 3080. Into the Radius is a hardcore survival extraction shooter. The default intended mode is tough as nails. It will challenge you. It will test your ability to stay calm under pressure, and the game will reward you or punish you for your preparedness. You do have to pick up on both visual and audio cues in order to survive. There's many environmental dangers in this game that are just as deadly as the enemy encounters you will come up against. A careless misstep can lead to your instant death. The core gameplay loop is thrilling, and you can tailor the experience to the challenge that you want. So you can ease up on the challenge if the game is too difficult for you, and you can also turn it up if you have a death wish. So this game is perfect for those looking for a challenge, but it's also approachable enough for a general audience. Into the Radius VR is simply one of the best games in VR. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it to everyone. I would definitely put Into the Radius VR in my top 10 list of VR games. It's not perfect. I do have some criticisms, but overall it is spectacular. What it does well, it does extremely well. This is my review of Into the Radius VR after 60 plus hours. First of all, Into the Radius VR is running on the Unreal Engine 4.2. Now, I was getting mostly 90 frames per second with a lot of graphical settings on high. However, at times I did experience several micro stutters and frame rate drops. Usually that would happen at the home base where I have all my weapons and items stored, and that's where the game would slow down the most and drop really badly with frame rates. It got so bad that I decided to sell off a lot of the weapons and items I had collected. This would be my biggest criticism of the game. On the other hand, I have to say that I'm pretty amazed that almost any item that you place somewhere will still be there exactly where you placed it. Although on a few occasions items will drop below the ground. But yeah, 99% of the time wherever I placed an item, the item was still there later on. It was very rare to lose an item. You do have full locomotion and teleportation available, smooth and snap churning. You can play comfortably seated. There are several comfort options. You can change the dominant hand along with camera tracking. You can enable virtual stock. You can turn on showing just hands or your whole body. This game basically has all the settings you'd want except for one. There's plenty of graphical options, but there is not one for DLSS, which is a big mess. It only has FSR. And this game was mostly bug-free. I did experience a few bugs. The biggest bug is that the game usually crashed on exit. It's annoying, but it does not affect gameplay, obviously. And sometimes the physics would get wonky. Sometimes items would go flying, but that was very rare. The only other bug I can recall that you can get stuck in the terrain, but there is an unstuck button to easily get out. Now, I'll be honest, there can be information overload Into the Radius. It is not for the faint of heart. The game does have tutorials, and they're pretty long and detailed, but I strongly suggest that you go into them if you've never played Into the Radius. This is not a game where you can skip the tutorial if you've never played it before. The gameplay can be slow and methodical as well. It is not for the impatient gamer. The game does have a story. There are 3 different endings. The good news is that you can experience all 3 endings as long as you have a save right prior to the last point of no return. There's a lot of environmental storytelling in this game. The Peshorsk zone is filled with dangerous anomalies and surreal landscapes. There's 5 main explorable maps in this game, including Pervame Route, Balatki Village, Fobeta Factory, Volkozaria, and Peshorsk Castle. You also have your main hub, which is a safety zone. Here you can buy and sell items, repair your gear, and also upgrade your weapons. You can also rest, which will heal you up. And there's basically 2 different meters or bars to keep track of in this game: health and stamina. And you can eat, drink, or smoke cigarettes in in order to help with stamina. However, only health injectors, a regeneration artifact, or sleep will regenerate your health. The other game mechanic to know about is the tide. The tide happens every 4 days and 2 hours by default, which corresponds to 4 hours and 5 minutes of real time. Keep in mind when you're in the radius that time goes faster than if you're at the base. And what the tide does is that it resets the world, and it will also teleport you to a random location. So you probably don't want to get caught in the tide unless you're fully stocked and ready to rock and roll. This also means that you have to think carefully before you sleep and how long you will sleep. The longer I played the game, the more I decided that I was not going to go to sleep. There's also an inventory system that you have to be mindful of. The big one is that you can only carry up to 15 kilograms with no penalty at all. You're likely to go over this limit, but the big limit to be wary of is going 30 kilograms or over. Otherwise, you'll also reduce your normal walking speed, along with your run speed and your stamina depletion. You don't want to go over 30. This game does not feel good walking and running that slow. And because time goes by so fast in the radius, the day and the night cycle goes fast too. When you first start playing into the radius, you'll want to do your objectives in the daylight, so you'll have to be quick in both going to your objective and getting it done without any kind of delay. But at some point, you'll probably get comfortable with playing at night, using your throwing knives to stay silent and stealthy, and getting very smart about which encounters to avoid. Probably the best part of Into the Radius is the weapon handling and physics, along with the weapon customizations. There are so many weapons in this game that I can't possibly cover them all. Plus, even though I have over 60 hours in this game, I honestly have not obtained all the weapons in this game. I'm still looking to get the M4A1, the M14, and the FN17. I can tell you that the favorite weapons that I have played with are the 357 Desert Eagle with 4x scope and laser attachment, the AK-74M with dovetail mount scope, silencer, and mounted flashlight, along with armor penetrating rounds, and the Saiga shotgun, and you can put anything on it. There's just so many weapons and so many attachments, along with bullet types: armor penetrating, subsonic, FMJ, and copper hollow points, but we don't talk about copper hollow points here. You have 2 shoulder holsters, one for a weapon and the other for your backpack. You can store 1 long weapon in your backpack and as many handguns as you want. You also have 2 hip holsters, and you put a handgun in one, and the opposite side one acts like a fanny pack. You also have several other smaller item holsters. You usually want to take some food, some drinks, a detector, a flashlight, maybe a grenade, and more than enough ammo for the mission that you're planning. You have to be well prepared before going off in a mission. The maps are pretty huge. It helps immensely if you plan your route ahead of time. And eventually, if you play this game long enough, every time that you fire your weapon, you'll be seeing like a cash register sounding off, because there is a cost to everything in this game. Your weapon and your armor durability goes down with almost each enemy encounter. So you have to think, is this encounter worth getting into? And which loot do I take and which loot do I leave behind? But it's also a very satisfying gameplay loop. I can't tell you the amount of times I escaped an encounter with only a sliver of health left, or how many times my gun jammed at the worst possible moment. Did I mention you have to maintain your weapons as well? And I developed a really bad smoking habit playing this game. The last thing I'll mention for this review is the enemy design and also the horror element present in this game. There's a good variety of enemy design as well as environmental dangers in this game. I don't want to spoil the game, so I'm not going to mention all of them, but there's fragments, phantoms, spawns, seekers, mimics, and armored entities, and these entities have different dangers and behave differently. And for the most part, I really like the enemy AI. They have different abilities to spot you. Some will try to flank you, others will try to snipe you. So depending on the enemy, you'll have different tactics that are optimal. And there's also different anomalies that present different dangers. Again, I don't want to do spoilers, so I'm not going to mention what they all are, but I will say that I particularly hate the lightning anomaly. If you know, you know. And there's a particularly nice surprise in the Cold Kazaria region. I really liked it. And as I mentioned before, there is an element of horror here. You'll hear voices in the dark, footsteps around you. "Hun, come have breakfast?" Will be absolutely one of the scariest lines as you're hiding around a corner in the dark, waiting for a moment of bravery to come out and face your fear. As I said, there are some flaws to Into the Radius VR. It's not perfect. The game stutters severely severely in the main hub, especially after you collect lots of weapons and items, it needs DLSS. The game crashes for me on exit almost 90% of the time. And one thing that I almost forgot to mention is that there is some problems with the game's 3D mesh at times. There are locations in this game where you should be able to shoot, but the game just shows like a solid object. For example, you can hide behind a chain link fence and enemies will shoot at you, but they can't get through to you. Conversely, you can see a gap where you should be able to hit your enemy, but you don't hit them because of the 3D mesh. But I don't want to complain too much because honestly, this game has probably the best weapon physics and weapon handling and realism of any other VR game, especially with this much depth behind the gameplay. The combat here is top tier. In my opinion, Into the Radius VR is one of the top 10 VR games of all time. If I have to rate it, I would give it an excellent 8.5 out of 10. This is a must buy in VR in my opinion. I did play it on the normal difficulty, but don't be afraid to change the difficulty to easier if you're having difficulty. I'm Fast Lawyer. This has been my review for Into the Radius. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I did put a lot of time and effort into this review, so I appreciate your support. Anyways, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of the video.